Unika is the 31st character to be added to Guilty Gear Strive, and this is a big moment now since there are more DLC characters than the base roster. However you might feel about this, one thing is for sure. A lot of the discourse around Unika is actually about how strong she seems to be, a far cry from what players said about characters like Dizzy and Venom. You would commonly hear people say things like, why do they release characters bad on purpose? So I decided to try Unika for 3 days to see if she was really that broken or if she's actually kind of overrated. This video is brought to you by Marvel Contest of Champions. Marvel Contest of Champions is one of the biggest mobile Marvel games and is now available to play on PC as well. On PC, you can run the game at 60 frames per second with characters appearing with more detail. You also get more control options as well. You could use your mouse, keyboard, and various types of controllers. I personally played with my fight stick here. Progress is also shared between the mobile version and the PC version, so you can play the game anywhere. Marvel Contest of Champions is a fighting game with RPG mechanics. You can focus on leveling up your characters or master the in-game mechanics. Or let's be real, both. You can find a way to play that fits your playstyle as well. And this includes characters. The game has over 300 Marvel superheroes and supervillains. New characters get added monthly, giving you room to experiment and explore. Tying with the Marvel universe gives the game some special privileges, so if you're getting hyped for the new Fantastic Four movie coming out, those characters are available as well to play in the game. Marvel Contest of Champions is coming soon to Steam. Wishlist the game now to earn some amazing rewards. And thanks to Kabam for sponsoring this video. But wait, LK, why 3 days? Don't you usually do this for a week? This is true, but unlike the last character, Venom, that they added, who is rated 1-star difficulty, so the game is saying that he's a very difficult character to pick up, which honestly, he was. Unika is a 5-star difficulty for starting the character. At least I'm pretty sure this means for starting the character. I didn't really expect to run into many technical problems for a character like this, so I felt like I could really put her through the ringer within this time period. Now, unlike most DLC characters, I did get a chance to try her shortly at EVO Japan for about 4-5 minute sessions. Unika is a character from the anime, so I expected her to be a pretty easy character to pick up just because she's probably attracting people who've never played the game before. And Arxis really was trying to keep spoilers about Unika on the low until the anime completed. That being said though, because of playing her at EVO Japan, I did have a small idea of things that she could do. And unlike Venom, since she's a much simpler character, I didn't really get lost in the sauce of the day one tech drop that you would see on Twitter. So I actually started my day by just watching some people play matches because people had already been playing her overnight, before quickly realizing, honestly, I should probably just play. Unika is an all-round type character, so people are actually pretty upset with this because of how many of this type of character is already in the game. You could say characters such as Sol and Kai, but also Chip, Leo, Sin, and even more are all-round types. Sin was the last type of character they've added way back in Season 2. Now, compared to characters like Kai, she actually is not that fast, but she has very large buttons such as her 4-slash, her 5H, and her 2S. Her unique twist is that she can enhance special moves to change the properties on hit and block. So for example, she has Stun Dipper, like Kai, which the community calls Gun Dipper. And this move goes from being an extremely punishable move to extremely safe at -3, to the point that if the opponent presses the wrong button, you can interrupt them. Her overhead gains enough advantage that you can convert it on counter hit and other situations. And her projectile goes from a safe, fast projectile to a very advantageous guard crush situation. Of note specifically because it has no throw protection. That being said, the goal of Guilty Gear Strive Season 4 is character identity, right? And there's another character in the game that enhances her special moves already, Giovanna. So Unika actually has another unique twist on her design, that being her command normals. So every character shares the same general chains in this game, usually limiting you to groups of lights, and then if you go to slashes, being able to do close slash, 2S or 4-slash into heavy buttons as a general rule. There are command normals like 6P, the universal anti-air. Sometimes characters have 6H, forward heavies, and even like 6K and other buttons. Unika uniquely has follow-up normals to her slash and heavy slash buttons, multiple ones. So she has a far slash and a far slash 2S, and a 2S far slash, and a 2S 2S. The same applies to her heavy button. So she has both standing and crouching follow-ups to both of her heavy buttons. Her 6H is not a normal, but a method of powering up her special moves raw. So instead of 236H, you use 6H into 26H to get the guard crush laser. And like many other characters, she has a shortcut input on her follow-up. So you don't have to do 6H core circle forward. You could just hit forward and get the projectile after doing 6H. Doing 4K will give you the enhanced overhead. 6K gives you the enhanced low. And 6S gives you the enhanced DP. The follow-up normals also automatically upgrade your special moves. This means you could use these moves to condition your opponent because they're worried about you doing enhanced special moves. On top of that, all these follow-ups also have dash cancels on them to varying degrees of advantage. In her case on day 1, I actually tried to do a lot of universal style mix-ups so that I would have ways of opening people up, but some of her normals, like her jump punch being horizontal, made it a little difficult to try to perform some of these techniques. It felt like she couldn't do some of these things. For example, while Kai is a pretty straightforward character, if you have meter, you could do some pretty strong, albeit generally universal, mix-up strategies, such as using the BRC overhead here. This can be performed a variety of ways, but it creates a really fast overhead situation. But because Unika's backdash is mostly grounded, I could not really seem to perform one. So I decided to give up labbing for a while and just hop into matches. In my opinion, by far the easiest way to start learning a new character is to just play them. I know it sounds really stupid and straightforward, but you can put as many hours of practice as you want. But just like a real fight, you won't be able to act in the moment without some experience. So in my initial matches, it was admittedly awkward, but we pushed through. And of course it's going to be kind of awkward as, you know, she's a new character. But specifically having these follow-up normals and thinking about my enhanced special moves made it a little awkward to pilot her in the first 20 to 30 games. But after some games, I start feeling more familiar. I get a really good vibe playing into Testament. And Testament has been buffed this patch, but thanks to Unika's projectile, it really made me feel like I was forcing them to approach. And it was a really great feeling considering who I've played into Testament before. I wrap up the day looking at big combo starters like her 5H. And this is the button that everyone memes on. It's huge, it's fast, it's great at anti-airing situationally, it's a good counter poke, and because of its size, it's great for controlling space in the corner. On top of that, the H follow-up is extremely plus on dash cancel, and she's able to enforce her position by using things like 214S, which also has amazing reward on counter hit. It's definitely something I'm looking to make people feel more in my game. I was getting hits already, but I wasn't converting them as well as I could. Day 2, I go straight to playing, as I ended day 1 by practicing. I'm mostly seeing things about combos, but unlike Venom, again, she's more of a straightforward character, so this time I'm really trying to slow the game down and use some tools I didn't use on day 1. One is a kind of obvious one if you've been following the character, which is her JD. This move is pretty similar to moves like Kai's Air Stunnage or Jekko's JD. The big thing about this move is that you can cancel it on whiff, so you don't actually have to make contact with something to follow up. You follow up with her only air special move, 236H. She can do it raw too, of course, but the JD also powers up the follow-up special move, so it's pretty useful. You can use this move to cut off lanes of approach and retreat at the same time, so it actually makes it quite useful. The other move I was trying to use is a lot less obvious, and I'm going to be talking about her kicks, specifically 5K and jump kick. 2K is a move that like everyone uses, and hers is actually pretty good. It's pretty big. Her sweep basically never whiffs off it, and you can combo into Red Wild Assault, which is extremely useful. But there's a gap in between her kicks and sweep, and the data on this move is not that great, despite having a pretty generous delay cancel into sweep. But I really liked 5K. So not only do you get the same conversion as 2K, but also I just like that it's really big, relatively good against lows, and it has low recovery. This thing about recovery is important to me because a lot of her other important buttons have a lot of recovery. So things like Far Slash and 5H have a ton of recovery on whiff. If you miss something like 5H, it's very easy to punish. So Having a move for mid-range that is hard to whiff punish is pretty valuable to me. I continue to play matches of her, and I feel pretty comfortable into Soul, which is not surprising considering how stubby his normals are, but also Chip, which is actually a surprise considering how fast he is. But the biggest surprise of the day comes from an unusual contender, Bedman. Bedman's quirky movement proves to be an interesting challenge. He's able to stall his movement, his JS vacuums, and is disjointed. And on top of all that, he has a full screen projectile with light tracking, plus the follow-up that activates automatically. And surprisingly, him jumping full screen felt really hard to deal with, and I tried a few methods of dealing with it, mostly unsuccessfully. Struggling as Bedman was a pretty big surprise considering how comfortable I felt into characters so far. But the true arbiter of pain on this day was Gold Lewis Dickinson. He's one of the best characters in the game, so I'm not too surprised I was struggling, but there was two things I was really having a problem with. For starters was his jump combined with his powerful jump D. So I found it hard to anti-air. This move can be a little difficult for even Baiken to anti-air, but Baiken is really good at hitting this move air versus air due to the angle of her jump S and her floaty jump. In comparison, Unika's kind of heavy jump was not doing the job, and I felt like I was attacking from the wrong ranges. The other problem was his backdash. I had a lot of problems establishing myself versus the character, and really it's because of the knockdown situation, and usually checking its backdash is one of the first things I do against a character. And while Unika does have a very active far slash and close slash, Gold Lewis has a more active backdash, so it can be quite difficult to keep up offense on him if you don't have a good strategy. And at this point, I was not making good use of the laser, which would have done this for me. So I spent day 3 mostly trying to figure out ways to improve on my consistency with the character. I feel pretty decent into matchups. I just feel like I'm letting people wiggle out too much or not really making them feel the hits I'm getting. I also feel like I'm freestyling a little bit too much on offense, and I want to really lock out a structure to rely on. So I settle for going for 2 style of knockdowns. Her air dash is oddly boxy, and there's a lot of angles where you think she would go over a character, but she actually ends up not. So there's situations where that's my main selection. The other, of course, involves her enhanced projectile. This move is a powerful option, as it is a guard crush, and my prior complaints about backdash are covered as well. On top of that, you can stay safe from a variety of reversals depending on how you do it. The example I used here would lose if I got closer. But in those cases, I would probably go for the previous selection I showed. You need to dash in order to get really close, but thanks to the shortcut follow-ups, this actually ends up being really easy. And when you do 6H, you can hold forward, press dash, and the button you want to do in order to get a dashing version of the enhanced special move. So, for example, I could do 6H, hold forward, press dash, and then mash the H button, and I can continuously rep out her enhanced laser. In my opinion, it's quite consistent. So I walk into day 3 with all the things I practice, and outside of the jumping problem, I feel quite good. The main difficulty I ran into on day 3 at the beginning would be another character people would not expect. It was Zato, a character that's been considered to be quite weak in the game for a long time now. He's gotten some small buffs over the past year or so, but nothing to really push him back to where he was at his peak. He does have poor HP and defense, but if you can't deal with his offense and flight, he can be really hard to deal with. Like Bedman, his flight was hard to deal with, and because of how high he can go, I couldn't even find a good way of reaching him most of the time. It did feel like when I pinned him down, I had a good amount of control, and JD did a great job of killing Eddie, but I felt like overall he had control of neutral. Normally I would rep out the character in the tower, so public lobbies, just trying them against a bunch of characters and stuff, but I felt like I was getting a really good hang of Unika pretty quickly compared to Venom, where on day 3 I was still like, yo, what am I doing, kind of, and developing strategies on the fly. So why not skip hard mode, or even lunatic mode? Why not go straight to lunatic plus? So when the best North American half-V Chaos player, Jack, asked me to play, I gladly accepted. And this was to really assess how good the character could be competitively. In this game, I think every character is at least lowercase g good, and usually the difference between the weaker characters in the game and the strongest characters in the game comes from consistency and tournament potential, as opposed to they just tab stuff that doesn't work. So if you hear a high-level player saying that a new character is like trash, it might not actually be that they think the character is garbage. Well, actually, they might think the character is garbage. But really what they're saying is they don't think the character stands a chance against the staples of the tournament meta. The score count was one-sided, but I actually felt surprisingly okay about it, which is funny considering what I felt like was a general struggle in previous matchups like Sato and Bedman. It was hard to swing into Happy Chaos because of his fast walk speed, but as the games went on, I started using lower commit attacks that I thought about before, like the 5k I mentioned earlier. I actually felt like the other hard thing was from Happy Chaos's defense, which is surprising because his defense is usually considered to be one of his weak points. Jack used an expert combination of 6p, Happy Chaos's low profile 2k, and jumping to deal with my offense. To compare to some characters, she uniquely has easier to see pressure because a lot of it is based off slash buttons and follow-ups. The follow-ups are projectiles at least, so she can control her positioning, but you need to use a mix of enhanced special cancels, dash cancels, and waiting in order to keep them locked down. So, how do I feel about her overall? I do think she's pretty good. It might sound a little simple, especially from like how I analyze games, but one of the things I actually pay kind of attention to is just like, am I winning fast? So take Slayer, like day one I was winning games on Slayer, day one I was winning games on Elfo, and in Elfo's case specifically, she was considered to be on like the lower end of mid tier or even like a low tier character when she came out. But then there are characters like Abba and Venom, and especially Venom, where the first few days were really tough. So I not only found her to be like pretty accessible, but since she does a lot of damage on top of that, I found her to be quite strong. And it's nice to have big, scary buttons to use against people and keeping people in the corner by like repeatedly using moves and threatening. So her biggest problems really did seem to me that her pressure is kind of seeable because you're using slash buttons a lot, and I don't like how her light buttons feel in pressure, which is a big part of making offense scary. Her struggling against floaty jumps in neutral, and her overall lack of mix-up. I think it was hard to kind of hit people in more reliable ways. I found myself using the overhead and relying on her guard crush a lot. It's gonna sound funny relying on her guard crush, but since she doesn't have something like a fast overhead, that's like the main go-to mix-up situation. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section. I do have a Patreon if you want to support the channel at patreon.com/LordKnight. If you're interested in Guilty Gear coaching or any fighting game coaching, I do that over at Medify, medify.gg/@LordKnight. I stream on most weekdays at twitch.tv/LordKnight, and that's where we play and practice and also record content for my second channel, LordKnight Chronicles. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.